We have a new creative team on Spider-Man, Joe Kelly at the forefront. I think a lot of people, if you're reading the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, probably aren't really looking forward to this. But recently there was an article out there kind of talking about what makes Spider-Man special. And in fact, they ended up highlighting a Joe Kelly issue, really showing that he really gets the heart of Spider-Man, Doc.
He really does. I think more so than most other creators out there, I think Joe Kelly does seem to get it. He was part of that Spider-Man brain trust in the Brand New Day era. If memory serves, I kind of liked his stuff basically the most out of everybody. I mean, granted, Zeb Wells was also part of that brain trust back then, and didn't really go so great whenever he was.
Maybe he was getting the coffee and donuts and wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, maybe he was. Like, maybe his issues were also written by Christos Gage back then, and since Slott's were too, and maybe that explains why his solo run on ASM wasn't so great. However, you know, we do have Joe Kelly to look forward to, and I think his time there is probably as part of that brain trust is probably a better indication than anyone else, because he's the one that's the real long time pro out of all of them.
Amazing Spider-Man 637, written by Joe Kelly with art by Marco Cicchetto. Julia Carpenter explains to Spider-Man that he is the moral heart of the Marvel Universe. If he ever gives up and becomes a killer, it will have massive ramifications that he can't fully comprehend. Julia explains that the only reason Marvel has heroes is that Spider-Man's moral example lights the way for others to follow. According to Julia Carpenter, the second that Spider-Man gives up on what he believes is right, the rest of the universe will follow soon after him. Killing Kraven will result in Spider-Man eventually being kicked out of the Avengers, becoming estranged from his Aunt May, finally ending up being shot to death by the NYPD in a graveyard, equating Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe to what Superman is in the DC Universe. He is the beacon of hope from which all the other characters really evolve out of, because he's true north when it comes to that moral clarity.
It's always been either him or kind of Captain America. Spider-Man gets the nod there because he's the solo character that can carry multiple books, whereas Cap is more of a team player, and on his solo stuff he's a little let's just say lackluster. He's more of a B and C tier solo hero. He only really kind of bumps up to that A list as the leader of the Avengers. So, you know, Spider-Man kind of has it all. He has that absolute, you know, importance to the universe, as well as kind of this absolute moral compass that points true north, that he is the one that is not corruptible. I know a lot of people still claim, oh, well, he made a deal with the devil, except for he didn't. He went along with his wife when she did.
Tale as old as time, Doc. I read that one in Genesis.
Exactly. So he's not the one that is, you know, he's not corruptible by any of the villains. He's not corruptible by power. He's not, you know, he's the one that he was granted the Captain Universe powers, and like kind of didn't know what the fuck to do with them, except for try to do better as a hero. You know, he is the quintessential moral center of the Marvel Universe, both as an important character as well as in his worldview.
Continue on in this article. They state Julia Carpenter specifically says that sparing Kraven's life means Spider-Man will be saving millions of people. As Julia explained, Spider-Man's capacity as a hero is nearly limitless, but so is his capacity as a destroyer. Without Spider-Man's example to follow, the rest of the world would slowly become darker as well. This is best shown by Spider-Man Reign universe, one of the darkest universes Marvel has ever depicted. This version of Spider-Man retired after accidentally killing Mary Jane, and the world fell into darkness soon after. It's hard to overstate just how important of a hero Peter Parker is, and the Marvel Universe knows it. While the Avengers and the other heroes might not consciously be aware of it, all of them depend on Spider-Man's moral core.
I feel that's a little hokey, but at the same time, I think it is true. He is a kind of shining example to normal people as well as his other superheroes. The number of superheroes in the Marvel universe over the years that have looked up to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and then when they found out he was Peter Parker, and back in the day when they found out he was a teenager, they were always shocked. They were like, "Oh my God, I'm like a 25-year-old guy looking up to a 16-year-old." That was always kind of a little bit of a crazy dichotomy there, where even as a teenager, where he should be the sidekick and everything, he was established heroes were looking up to him and to his example. He is an example. His behavior, his willingness to sacrifice himself, to save others, to always try to do the right thing, to not take chances, to try to do it even with like a very, as much as Spider-Man does his being all mouthy with villains. I mean, part of it's his nerves, but as a result, it ends up with this kind of great, hey, look, not only am I doing super heroic things, but I don't have to be all gruff and gritty and everything. I can do it in a bantering manner and like seem like I'm super happy to be out here doing this. And where it doesn't feel like a job to him, it feels like his calling, and that's inspiring to not only the other heroes but also to the citizenry that gets to witness his impact and to get saved by him, and then they see a guy doing it basically even though he's wearing a mask but with a smile on his face.
So I would definitely say Joe Kelly gets Spider-Man. It's the other half of the Spider-Man character that I think maybe he needs a little bit of work on, that being Peter Parker. The big difference between Superman and Spider-Man, obviously he's an adult and everything, but when Superman is Clark Kent and he's kind of bumbling around and he doesn't know exactly what he's doing, it's all an act. He has to kind of dumb himself down. That way when Superman shows up, people be like, oh yeah, Clark Kent went and hid in the closet again because he's so scared. Whereas Peter Parker in his day-to-day life isn't acting like a loser. He just kind of is a loser. And I wish they would be able to bring up the Peter Parker persona up to the Spider-Man persona. Maybe he doesn't need to be running into buildings and stuff like that, but he should be able to carry a steady job. He graduated college. He should be able to have a date without absolutely ruining it every single time. So I really wish they would elevate the Peter Parker up to the Spider-Man part, because that's an essential half of the character, and that's authentically also who he is.
I agree there. I can't disagree at all. And I think that I don't know if this is a Joe Kelly thing, a Zeb Wells thing, or an editorial thing. I'm leaning toward it being more of a Nick Lowe thing. I think Joe Kelly having the opportunity here should push for a Spider-Man, in the same way that Peter David did when he came on and started writing, I think it was Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man back, pre One More Day, and he made Peter into a school teacher. I think either he did it or J. Michael Straczynski did, one of the two, but he gave him a regular, adult job with adult responsibilities and everything. I understand we're in a century now where it's more of a gig economy and nobody sticks around in any fucking careers anymore, except for idiots like me that have been at the same, in the same career for 20 some years now. But I feel like Peter Parker is established enough and smart enough and an adult enough. He's not that much of a bumbling fool where he can't find a way to balance this. Maybe not perfectly. I don't want him to balance it perfectly. I want him to still, come up short either as Spider-Man or as Peter Parker. But I feel like, him just going through the motions of, well, I guess I'll get this office job and I'll keep doing my high school gig of selling pictures to the newspaper. Oh, wait, now I'm a teacher, even though I should know better than to know that I can't keep a Monday through Friday gig except for, having the summers off. He should be smart enough to recognize that, avoid those careers, but not be constantly getting fired and ending up sleeping on some chick's couch again and borrowing money from whatever girlfriend he's dating at the time. That's 17-year-old Peter Parker. That is not 30-year-old Peter Parker, and we're at 30-year-old Peter Parker. Yeah, he's an incredibly competent superhero. He needs to show that same competence in his personal life as well.
And we can elevate Peter Parker without bringing down Spider-Man or ruining the idea that Peter Parker has great responsibilities. He's juggling so many of them that he does let people down, but he doesn't have to be a loser.
He doesn't. We've spent, I understand the Parker luck and the lovable loser thing, but when you're 32 years old, like Peter is at this point, 30, 32, you're not a lovable loser. You're just a fucking loser. If you're still, begging for money and sleeping on people's couches.
What we see with Joe Kelly, he's got a lot of work to do on Peter Parker, but he definitely has that feel of Spider-Man. I think people could really use a great Spider-Man right now. We're also getting a really good artist on this, Pepe Larraz, and he certainly understands that there's two different aspects to the Amazing Spider-Man series. In a recent interview, he said this: I think Spider-Man comics work because we care about Peter and his world, so that was my main focus, to draw a Peter that you instantly recognize and empathize with. And then stating, I focused on drawing the flow of Spidey's movement and speed in a way closer to animation than comic books. Basically identifying, hey, when I do Peter, I have to do something very specific. So you recognize that it's Peter, you empathize with what's going on there because he's the main crux of why you buy into it, because you love Peter. But when I do Spider-Man, I want him to look awesome. I want him to be as badass as possible when he's in motion doing superheroics. And it feels like that's the right way to go about it.
Look at the most popular eras of Spider-Man comics. The ones that are still, McFarlane and Eric Larson and Bagley. All three of them had one thing in serious common, is that they expressed a lot of motion and energy and athleticism in Spider-Man, in a way that, maybe before, as much as I love, Romita and Romita Jr. and Ditko and all the other wonderful artists that have been on ASM over the years, they still made Spider-Man move like a man, and Spider-Man should be able to move better than that, more agile, more flexible, more whatever, and to convey that level of speed and motion. They took that to a new level, and I think Pepe Larraz, can probably do that. Stuart Immonen did a pretty good job of it, and he's just kind of a clone, so why not?
But I think it's important to recognize that you not only have to highlight Spider-Man, which is absolutely essential, but if you want people to be drawn in the story, you got to do Peter Parker and his supporting cast and all that stuff. I think there's this weird tendency to either just completely concentrate on Spider-Man or completely concentrate on Peter Parker, and they get out of balance. And I think ASM gets out of balance with the focus on one over the other. I think the series just is far less enjoyable because you don't get those awesome character moments and you don't get pulled into the story because there's way too much Spider-Man. Or if you're just doing Peter Parker 24/7 on every single page, there's not enough action and stuff for you to root for when it comes to Spider-Man. And hopefully they're going to kind of nail the landing on that perfect balance.
There really is, because when you do Spider-Man, all pages and pages and pages of just Spider-Man, you end up feeling like you're just in a video game. But whenever you do nothing but entire arcs where it's 90% Peter Parker, you feel like you're reading
Spider-Man.
It feels like you're reading a slice of life comic, which is also not what we want. But when you get that right balance, it feels soap opera-y in a way that adds tension, that just makes the book better than everything else on the market. You can't do, I don't think it would work to do that kind of a balance between Bruce Wayne and Batman in a Batman comic. I don't think it would work. The same way that I don't think it would really work to do that level of balance between a Clark Kent and a Lois.
I disagree wholeheartedly. When we had the John Kent as a child with Lois Lane, I would say 60% of the pages were dedicated to the family, and it was amazing.
Well, no, I'm not. I understand that. I just think that over the long term, maybe that gets a little old, but I don't know. Maybe it can work. I think that with Spider-Man, though, with the size of his, Peter Parker's, I guess you could say, supporting cast. Well, his supporting cast and the size of Spider-Man's rogues gallery, you end up with this enormous cast that can really balance out well. And I feel like a lot of writers come in and go with, oh God, the last guy spent all 90% of his time doing just Peter Parker and him moping about. So I got to do so much more Spider-Man. And then they end up going too far one way or the other. You look at those Stan and Steve books. There was a great balance. You look at him with Ramita, great balance. You get into the 300s with Michelini and McFarlane and then Larson. There was a wonderful balance between all that, and it made for a spectacular story.
So with 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, I will give Joe Kelly this. It is balanced. Half the book is the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man story, and then half of the book is Peter Parker, but none of it's interweaved. You get half of the Peter Parker or the one story, and then it just shifts to the other one, and then the other half, and nothing is really cohesive and working together. You have to have Peter Parker and Spider-Man entwined with each other. Otherwise, it just gets really fun. It gets really boring, and it feels like you're just reading two different comic books.
Absolutely. And you don't want to have that problem. You need to find a way to make it work. And I think you can, when you get the right balance, especially when you're bouncing back and forth between, you have a couple of pages of Spider-Man, because you don't want to waste, tens and tens of pages on a fight so that you only have 2 pages left of story. You can do this good balance until you get to you can do that roller coaster of a little bit of action, a little bit of drama, a little bit of action, and then you can go big on one of them.
Yeah, you got Peter Parker. He goes, oh my goodness, Aunt May needs her blood pressure medication. It's been lost. If she doesn't get it, something bad's going to happen. Then he becomes Spider-Man to go get the blood pressure medication. He sees Electro. They fight. He gets a phone call, has to pull out and be Peter Parker again. Like, yes, the medicine's coming. Defeat Electro, get the medicine, and end up back. And now you have Spider-Man and Peter Parker, basically interweave together, and you have a cohesive story that's fun, action-packed, and you still get all those character moments, and you have some stakes involved, and it feels like they just kind of cut the two off.
Yeah, they really did. You're getting all Peter or all Spider-Man, and it's like, and never the two shall meet, and their missions, their aspirations, their goals on a day-to-day basis can't be the same. Or they need to be diametrically different so that, oh no, Peter can't do the thing that he was supposed to because he's being pulled in another direction. No, he's just getting pulled into a detour on the same path that he was already on.
Really do appreciate it, Doc. If you like what we're doing here on Think Critical YouTube, there's a longer version of this exclusive on Patreon. Doc Unfiltered, you get this as well as our Time Slide #1 review, completely uncensored. I do have to edit things down here for the YouTubes. If you'd like to check that out and support the channel, there is a link in the video description.